August 9th, 1945, 1:10 a.m. The skies above Nagasaki. Major Charles Sweeney holds boxcar steady at 31 feet. 1,000 feet as Bombardier Captain Kermit Byon peers through the Norden bomb site. They've been circling for nearly 10 minutes. Cloud cover blankets the city below. Fuel gauges drop toward critical. One of the reserve tanks failed to transfer, 700 gallons trapped and useless. They have one pass, maybe two, before they'll need to ditch the 10,000-pound uranium core into the Pacific. Then, the clouds part. Byon's voice crackles through the intercom. "I've got it." 60 seconds later, the second atomic bomb in human history drops away from the B-29's belly. 43 seconds of freefall. The weapon-designated Fatman plunges toward the Uragami Valley, while Sweeney banks hard, diving to gain speed, racing against the shockwave that's about to rip through the stratosphere. Every man aboard knows what happened to Enola Gay's crew 3 days earlier. The blinding flash, the dual shockwaves that hammered the aircraft like anti-aircraft fire, the mushroom cloud that climbed to heights no bomber could reach. The flash turns the cockpit white. Then the first shockwave hits. Boxcar shudders violently. Sweeney fights the controls as the second wave strikes, harder than the first. Behind them, 22 kilotons of explosive force erases the Mitsubishi Steel and Arms Works, the Nagasaki torpedo factory, and 40,000 souls in a single incandescent moment. In Tokyo, 560 miles northeast, Emperor Hirohito receives the news within the hour. What would happen in the next 5 days would end the largest war in human history, not through a final invasion that would have killed millions, but through a decision one man could no longer refuse to make. For 3 years and 8 months, the Empire of Japan had been losing the Pacific War in slow motion. Since the catastrophic defeat at Midway in June 1942, every strategic indicator pointed toward inevitable collapse. The Imperial Japanese Navy lay shattered at the bottom of Lake Gulf. American B-29s burned Japanese cities with impunity from bases in the Marianas. The Soviet Union, bound by promises made at Yalta, prepared to tear through Japanese forces in Manchuria. Yet, Japan fought on. The statistics painted a portrait of national suicide. At Iwo Jima, 20,000 Japanese defenders fought to the death. Only 216 surrendered. Okinawa proved even more horrific. 110,000 Japanese military dead. 100,000 Okinawan civilians killed in the crossfire, or driven to mass suicide by Japanese troops who told them Americans would torture and murder them. When Okinawa fell in June 1945, the Kamikaze Corps had sunk 36 American ships and damaged 368 more. The message was unmistakable. Japan would make every mile of homeland soil cost rivers of blood. American intelligence designated the invasion plan Operation Downfall. Olympic, the assault on Kyushu, would commence November 1, 1945. Coronet, the invasion of Honshu and the Kanto Plain, would follow in March 1946. Planners projected casualties that staggered even hardened military minds. General George Marshall estimated 250,000 American dead. Some projections ran to 500,000 Allied casualties. Japanese losses, military and civilian, could reach 10 million. The Japanese government had distributed 28 million bamboo spears to civilians and organized the entire population into a national militia. Women trained to attack tanks with satchel charges. Schoolchildren learned to throw themselves under treads with explosives strapped to their bodies. What made the strategic situation particularly devastating was Japan's complete disconnection from military reality. The Supreme Council for the Direction of the War, the Big Six who controlled Japanese policy, remained paralyzed between two factions. Prime Minister Kansanara Suzuki and Foreign Minister Shigenori Taine quietly sought peace terms. War Minister Karichi Karanami, Army Chief of Staff Yashijiro Omizu, the Navy Chief of Staff Samu Toyoda insisted on fighting to the last civilian. Their conditions for surrender verged on fantasy. No occupation, no war crimes trials. Self-disarmament by Japanese forces, and preservation of the imperial system with the emperor's power intact. The deadlock was absolute. Under the Japanese constitutional system, the cabinet required unanimous agreement for major decisions. A single dissenting vote meant no action. The military controlled the war and navy ministries. No cabinet could form without their approval. If Anami refused to cooperate, the government would collapse, and the military could install a hardline regime committed to national immolation. Emperor Hirohito occupied the paradoxical center of this paralysis. Japanese constitutional theory held him as a divine being whose will was absolute. In practice, he reigned the Chibat rule, a sacred symbol who ratified decisions made by his ministers, but almost never initiated policy. Breaking with this tradition risked civil war, military coup, or his own assassination. Yet as August 1945 ground forward, one reality became inescapable. He was the only person in Japan with the authority to break the deadlock. By late July, the Potsdam Declaration offered Japan surrender terms: occupation, disarmament, war crimes trials, and democratic reform. It promised that Japan would not be destroyed as a nation, but left the emperor's fate deliberately ambiguous. The Japanese leadership, clinging to the fantasy of negotiating through still neutral Soviet intermediaries, issued no formal response. Prime Minister Suzuki's use of the word masatsu, which could mean withhold comment or treat with silent contempt, allowed Western press to report Japan had rejected peace. Then came word that the Soviet Union would enter the war within days, demolishing any hope of a negotiated settlement. The Imperial Palace staff began preparing fireproof bunkers and emergency supplies. Everyone understood what was coming. No one could imagine it would arrive riding a uranium core from Los Alamos. War Minister Anami believed absolutely in the coming battle.
To him, mathematics told a different story than American analysts imagined. Yes, Japan had lost its navy, its air force, and its empire, but the homeland remained. Mountainous terrain favored defenders. 60 million Japanese, indoctrinated with Bushido spirit and imperial devotion, would transform every city into Okinawa multiplied 100-fold. The Ketsugo defense plan concentrated 2.3 million regular troops, 28 million civilian militia, 5,000 kamikaze aircraft, and 3.3 million suicide boats at expected invasion beaches. Intelligence reports suggested Americans anticipated 200 to 300,000 casualties. Anami's staff believed the actual numbers would prove far worse. If Japan could inflict such catastrophic losses that the American public lost the will to continue, a negotiated peace preserving some form of the emperor system became possible. Perhaps not victory, but not